Hey guys, and welcome back to another video on rebuilding the basics in Python. In this session we're going to take a look at the built-in function map. Now the job of map is to effectively take an iterable, such as a list, string or a tuple, and the function. Basically its job is to say for each item in this iterable, apply this function to it and then give me back a map object. We traditionally use these map objects to then cast into things like lists or other iterables, or you can directly iterate over them. So let me quickly show you an example of what one might look like. Suppose I'll keep this really simple just for the sake of time. Suppose I've got, a simple list of numbers in A, and then what I can then do here, let's just call this floats here. So if I wanted to convert all these to floats, I could basically use map and say, take this iterable, map them all through the float function, and then give me the results back as a list. So if I was to do list, map, and you're just following this pattern here by the way, func and iterable. So to convert to float, we use the float function. The iterable in this case is A. So if I was to then come along and do floats and hit run, there we go. We've successfully mapped A through the float function and we are good to go. Now, of course, there's a few kind of caveats here. Of course, the thing that you pass in here, this must be a valid function. And we're going to use a function called callable to check for this. And A must be a valid iterable of some kind. So when we rebuild this, we're going to basically try and check for these two here. You can also do a custom function, such as say, of course, we want to keep this really simple. If I do add 10 of x, and the job of add 10, as you probably guessed, is to do x plus 10. So we could actually remove float here and do add 10. This now means that, let's just call this AA. Sorry, lazy variable name, but it gets the job done. And hit run again. So now we see that these 1, 2, 3, 4s, they've now been mapped through this add 10 function, and then they're good to go here. Let me quickly show you something. So if I was to do b is equal to, say, 5 here, if I pass in b, now this shows up to basically say int object is not callable. So that's basically the check that we're going to be doing here. On the flip side, if I do add 10 here and put b on this side, we're now passing in a non-iterable into this space here. So then we get int object is not iterable. So just a heads up, those are the things that we're going to be checking for. Is this a valid function? Is this a valid iterable? So without further ado, I'm going to actually move this to the top. We're going to be using this for our testing later, so I'll get this blanked off. We'll jump in and start to build our function from scratch. Now the first thing I want to do is just quickly start off by saying def, and let's do my map. Now we discussed this in the previous one. Don't call it the same as the built-in function. We don't want to overwrite the existing function in this case. Purely the sake of these videos is that we're just practicing our Python logic. And in this function, we're going to be looking at control flow, we're looking at try and accept, we're going to look at custom errors, we're going to look at list comprehensions. So just to kind of reiterate the whole point of these videos, we're just practicing the core basics of Python. And this is something I used to do many years ago when I was first learning the language. So our function is going to take in func and iterable. For this one, we're going to leave the type in, so I want to kind of keep this nice and simple. And just focus on this core functionality of what the map function does. And I think what we'll do first is we'll try and kind of catch when these are inappropriate inputs. So to figure out if something is a function, there's actually a function called callable. So let me show you what that looks like. If I do print callable, let's do add 10. So the add 10 is a callable function. So we'd expect that to say true. A is our list of numbers, which is not callable. You cannot call a list, and that's false here. So we can do sort of like is callable, except for we could do if callable A, okay, proceed. If not, we'll then raise some kind of error. So that's going to be kind of our defining logic at the top here. So we'll do if not callable func. We'll do kind of placeholders for the time being. We'll do not callable here. We'll do return for the time being. And then we'll also check the iterable. Now, to show you what we're looking for when iterable, if I do dir of list, and we get all of our kind of attributes and methods here, there's one in particular, it's this guy, iter. every kind of iterable object in Python has this. And this basically means you can iterate over it. So to check for this, we basically use the has attribute function. So we do if not has attribute, we're checking our iterable. So we're saying if this does not have this attribute, we'll do we'll just pinch this guy from here and we'll put it here. Make sure our indentation is the same and change this to say not iterable. And for now, that'll do it. Let's get the screen cleared. So at this point, I'd be keen to test this out. Tend to find if you're kind of building up more complex things, don't wait until the very end to test out this kind of distinct functionality. Test it as you're going along, it becomes a bit easier to debug then. So if I do my map, add 10, an A here, see what we get. So we get nothing, which is fine. We haven't printed off what the function's returning, which would return none, and neither of these have fired, which is great. Let's pass in something that's not an iterable. Let's pass in an integer. Okay, yeah, pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's revert this back to A, and let's pass in a string. Strings are not callable, and we see here it says not callable. So we're on the right lines. We've kind of done our error checking for the time being, which is fantastic. So I'm going to replace these, add 10 here, and now instead of printing, we want to raise an error here instead. So to do this, I'm actually going to make a bit more space here. We're going to define a custom class. Now our custom class, let's see what we call it. We're going to use this camel case typing here. So we'll do, let's do not a function. Yeah, there we go. Do not a function error. So probably one of the worst named errors you'll ever see, but it does the job. So I'm going to do a docstring to say what happens. Raised when a non-function is passed to my map. There you go. Make sure you do these for your insanity. You find if you write code, do these as you kind of do it along. It means if you come back to it at some point later on in time, it just makes it a bit easier to kind of memorize. Okay, here's what this class is for. And this one, let's do not iterable error, and we'll say raised when a non-iterable is passed to my map. And now because these inherit from the base exception class, it means we can do raise like that. No, like that. It means we can do raise my error here. So all we do is kick out these prints, and then we do raise not a function error, and then we can do here raise, where is it? There it is, not iterable error. And I think as well, it's often quite nice here to do like a little, let's see, what you can actually do is you can put text in here. So for example, if you wanted to say, func is not a function, you could do potentially like a little left string like this. This is purely optional. So if I did func here, you could do something like that, which would then get kind of displayed back to whoever's using your code. So if we clear it now, hit run. Okay, no syntax errors, that's good. Now if I try 10, there we go. So it's raised, not a function error. 10 is not a function. And then do the same for this guy as well, really. So steal this, put this inside here, and then we can do iterable. I'll make sure you get this correct. Iterable is not an iterable, like that. So that should work now for both of those. So if we do add 10, I'd be keen to test this. Let's just do a number. So the 456 should not be iterable. And yeah, looks good. 456 is not an iterable. So we can clear the screen. And now all we need to do now is get this cleaned up a little bit. We'll keep it one line between everything. So we now want to figure out, well, now we have a valid function and a valid iterable. How do we map all of these through this function? Now, the way I would argue you would do this is to basically use a list comprehension. To show you what I mean by this, let's see, if I just did x here equal 4, 5, 6, 7 here, When you're doing a list comprehension, you've actually got a slot at the front of the list to basically do something like, some func of I for I in this case x. And whatever you do here, it's basically it's almost like an internal for loop. We're basically saying for each item in x, pass it into this function. This list now contains all of those return values. So, we could do float of I. So when we print y now, there we go, we have this format just like that. So we can basically do the same thing. So I'll do func of I. Now something that's really interesting here is happening with this func. Notice how this isn't actually a function, it's a reference to one, but I'll explain a bit more of that in just a second. So func of I for I in iterable, like this. So what's left now is to test this, and I want to test it against our kind of original data here. So let's pinch this and bring it down. So if I was to do this normally, let's just call this v1, and so this is my version 1 using the original list map. So function sequence, add 10 is my function, my sequence is a. So if I print off v1, we should get the result of a mapped through here back into a list. Print v1, and there we go, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now, if I now replace this, do v2, replace map with my map, and then we'll print v2 alongside v1. That's pretty good to me. I'm happy with that, and that looks like it works here. So I mentioned I'd come back to this. So basically what's happening here, the functions in Python are first-class objects. That means that in a sense you can treat them like any other variable, so like a string or a list. So if you're passing, we're passing a list in here, we're referring to that list there, and then we're just, a function gets on with it. The same is true for a function. We've passed a function into a function, so this here, this func of I, that's just a reference back to that function here, so we can just use it as if it's any other type. Which in some, I would argue, makes Python pretty cool in that way. You can pass functions around as if they are any other type, which is quite nice. And in a sense, that covers it. So that's how to effectively rewrite the map function from scratch. And before we finish, I want to kind of cover what we've touched on. So we've covered on basically how to create a custom function. We've defined it ourselves. We've done 2 if-not statements, and these kind of come in to say, if the function passed in is not callable, raise a custom error, and we define that here. We then did a second one to basically say, if the iterable passed in does not have the iter attribute, then go ahead and raise another custom error. If these 2 don't get raised, we then simply say return list comprehension, where each item in the iterable is passed into func and then returned as a list. And there we have it, guys. Thanks very much, and I'll see you all in the next video.